Do you regularly use props in your speeches? Why or why not? Please welcome the vocal Jim Emery, as he shares the opportunities that props bring to help you stand out among your peers with his workshops, Paint Your Personality with Props.
Thank you, Toastmaster Lori. Props. What is a prop? Well, loosely, it's any object you use as part of a performance. And performances include speeches. So, how many of you regularly use props in your speeches? Now, slides don't count. Yeah, not that many. Should you use them? Should you use props? Well, that may be a personal style question, but there are many benefits to using props. First, props are concrete. If you think about it, speech is abstract. The idea or the process or the belief or the event isn't in the room. Props are real. You can see them, you can hold them, you can touch them, sometimes you can hear them. Let's say that you wrote a book called Terrifying Table Topics. You could talk about that book all you want, but showing the book makes it real in a way that not showing it would not. Props are concrete. Props are unexpected. These days, props have become a lost art. Most of our presentations tend to be digital slide dominated. I call it death by PowerPoint. Using a prop will be unexpected and you will stand out. Now, props can be emotional. They're visual. They have a shape, a size, a color. They may even evoke memories and trigger emotions, including laughter. Props can facilitate drama. You can create drama or suspense with a hidden prop, and audiences always love surprises. And the prop can even be personified. An example is my friend here, Toto, the Table Topics Terrier. Hi, Toto. He's a character even though you know he's an inanimate object. Props require preparation. Now, that's a good thing. Audiences appreciate that you're not just standing there winging it, throwing words at them. You made some extra effort to provide value for them, to bring that prop into your presentation. Props are memorable. Audiences may not remember an individual sentence or a slide, but they'll always remember that prop you surprised them with. Eric Schur may be familiar to some of you. He's been a District 6 International Speech Contest winner a number of times. Told me a couple months ago that he remembered a speech I had given over a year earlier. And the reason he remembered it was because I had this squeaky dog toy that I faked threw across the room and squeaked it. And that stuck with him. Props are memorable. So, how do you choose a prop? Well, options are nearly unlimited other than, well, will it fit in the room? Can you transport it to the media, to the venue? I mean, a backhoe would be a great prop, but pretty tough to get into the building and on stage. So here's a checklist on how to choose a prop. First, is it linked and relevant to your message? For example, if I wrote a book called Hack Your Way to Fame and Fortune, okay, good for me. But if I show you that book and it looks like a real book, all of a sudden now it has reality. And Charlie showing his book will be the same. Showing that book makes the book real. And it's linked and relevant to the message. Second, could it be considered offensive? Without stepping on any toes, a MAGA hat is a perfect prop for a Trump rally. but likely offensive at a League of Women Voters meeting. So know your audience and evaluate whether that prop might, in certain contexts, be considered offensive. What will you do with it? If it's clothing, well, wear it yourself. That's the easiest thing. If it's a product, you might demonstrate its use. Let's say you're an electronics manufacturer and you have a new microphone. You might take that microphone, show the connection at the end of it, the windscreen. You might actually use it connected up to a sound system so you could demonstrate its use. On the other hand, you could show it as part of a story. Let's say you were doing a speech that had a story about you winning the Grand National Karaoke Night. So when you were all done with that winning, what might you do? Well, what do you do with mics? You drop them. Is it an actual physical thing? Will you bring it with you? Or perhaps maybe bring it in metaphorically. Let's say you're talking about a global issue and you want something to bring that message across. Well, you might bring a globe with you. Certainly, that is metaphorically part of your message. Now, is this particular globe a good prop? It all depends, and I'll get back to that in just a minute. Next on your props checklist, is it big enough? Can the audience see the details in the back row? So here's a prop. This is a DVD. How many of you can actually tell it's even a DVD? Yeah, maybe. How many of you can read what's written on the DVD? Probably none of you. To read it, I would have to hold it up probably about this close to my camera. And even then, that's pretty clumsy, and the fine print might be pretty tough. But back here, you can't read it. Now, imagine if you were on a stage giving an in-person presentation. Would showing this prop have much value? Probably not, because nobody can read it anyway. So is it big enough? Now, is it small enough? Can you handle it and manipulate it? And we'll get back to the globe there. Online, this is cumbersome. This would be a pain to actually work into a speech online. However, on stage, on a big stage, you might put that on the stage and refer to it, and it would work just fine. Now, is it a surprise prop? Well, clearly hiding that globe would be surprise. Here's another option. Here's my cowboy hat. Now, I can hide that, and I just did, until I need to use it online. But if I was giving a speech on a stage in a big auditorium, could I bring that hat in and hide it until I needed it? Probably not. So is it small enough to meet your particular needs? Does it add value to the presentation? Now, these sunglasses, these are cool. Yeah, so I could wear these sunglasses. That'd be a cool prop. But only if being cool is part of your message. If it's not, then these are just a distraction. So a prop must enhance your message, not distract from it. All right, so you choose a prop. Now, how are you going to use it? Well, before you use it, make a plan. Do you start with the prop? Well, for a piece of clothing, that's probably the best idea, because then you can just walk in with it. Do you hold it up? Will you throw it? Will you roll it? Will you squeak it? Will it be part of a demonstration? Maybe with that microphone? Will you be pointing at its features while you're talking? Will you feature it for 10 seconds or 10 minutes? If it's 10 minutes, you better do some interesting things with it. When will you stop using it? Make a plan around all of those things. And before using it, rehearse. Rehearse it thoroughly. If it's a surprise prop, can you get it out of the bag or the box? Or might you drop it? And will it do what you want? How many of you have ever seen high-tech demos that didn't work, right? Will it do what you want? Rehearse to make sure it will. Before you use it, will you smuggle it into the room? If it's a surprise prop, don't give away the surprise. If this hat were over here closer, I would have wrecked the surprise of showing you the hat. If you're in person, it's a lot easier to hide things. Also make sure that when you want it, you can easily locate it. If that mic that I showed you had been in its bag, it might have been a struggle to actually get it out to show it to you. Now, while you're using it, now that you've planned and practiced, you might build some anticipation for it. You might gesture toward it, for example, or maybe hint at what it is, or even play a guessing game. But when you expose the prop, use some dramatic flair to unveil it. Some of you who saw my recent tabletop or my recent Tall Tales speech know that at one point this voice comes on and says, "Jim Emery, you just won 5 Nobel Prizes. What are you going to do next?" And what I did next was, "I'm going to Disney World." So that flair got a lot of value out of that Mickey Mouse Club hat. Play it up. You brought the prop, you might as well get some mileage out of it. Now, another thing is make it easy to see. This is a prop, this is a trophy, one I won a couple years ago. If I'm in a big auditorium, if I hold it about this high, probably the people in the back row can't even see it. So I may need to hold it really high so that they can see it. Hold it steady. If it moves all around, it's a little hard to tell what it is. Show its different sides if that really matters for the particular prop. Give everybody a good look. So in a big room, you might walk around to different spots and show it over there, and then over here, and then over there. Don't rush it. You put the effort into that prop, get some mileage out of it. Oh, and online, make sure the lighting works with it. You can see the gleam that happens with this depending on where it is relative to the lights. Now, how do you use it after you're done using it? Put it away. Preferably out of sight and out of reach. Out of sight gets the audience back looking at you. Out of reach prevents you fiddling with it because it's still in your hands. Put it away, out of sight, out of reach. Now, after you're using it, would you pass it out into the audience? Maybe, but my recommendation is usually don't do that for a couple of reasons. One is, as soon as that prop finds its way to that individual in the second row, those eyeballs are distracted looking at the prop instead of watching and listening to you. So I would suggest not handing it out unless you really need it. Obviously, if it's fragile, it might get damaged, or if it's expensive, it might get lost. So maybe hang on to it. But if it's important, you might invite your audience members for a closer look afterwards. If seeing or touching or looking at it up close assists your memorability, then that may seem like a bonus opportunity. Now, I've got some examples of memorable usage of props that I would like to share with you. First, we'll look at prop usage in some of the Toastmasters World Championship of Public Speaking speeches. The first, this is Dhananjaya, I think I'll pronounce it right, Hettiarachchi, who won in 2014. You can see the prop that he uses here. It's a simple red rose, which he turns metaphorically into a description of his life as he picks the petals off, throws them in a wastebasket, breaks the rose, throws it in the wastebasket. describing what had happened to his life. And then as he reconstructs his life, as the speech progresses, at the very end, he goes over and picks out from the wastebasket a fully formed perfect rose. Again, very powerful use of a very simple prop. In 2019, Luisa Montalvo, she didn't win. She came in second. I would have given her the championship, but she had an entertaining story about stopping on the side of the road to help a fella change a tire, and then realizing that, oh, she might be in trouble here, that he could take advantage of her. So she goes back to her prop table and puts on this tough looking stocking cap and gets out her tire iron and a hammer, and just the visuals of that made that story incredibly powerful and incredibly funny. Great use of props. Mohammed Khatani won in 2015. He started his speech by taking out a cigarette and flicking his lighter to light the cigarette. You could hear the gasps in the room when he did that. Curiously, though, he worked his way out of a very tough situation, and it worked for him. That cigarette at the beginning, and then he bookended it at the end, was something that was just really strong, mostly because it was unexpected. Pres Vasilev, if any of you have seen his speech. Now, you look here and you say, so what's his prop? I mean, that's just his suit jacket folded up on the floor there. And yet what he is doing is he's jacking up his car to change the tire, complete with a jack that squeaks. Now, the jack isn't visible, but he performs this so well that it actually is a prop on stage. You just have to imagine through his incredibly excellent choreography at what's going on. So sometimes a prop can be real, but not really real. All right, let's look at District 106 contest. I got just two examples here. If any of you saw the District 106 International Speech Contest this spring, Peter Totaro won that contest with a speech about doing magic tricks with his daughter. Well, if you're going to do magic tricks, you kind of have to show them. You can't just talk about them. And Pete did. He had some very nice things. This is a card trick. He also had a magic coloring book that images came and vanished with it. And you had to have that prop or the speech doesn't work. One other one that I'll share with you, that if you'll allow me, it's only gotten through the Area 43 contest so far. I'm hopeful that it will make it through the Division E contest, and you may see it again in the spring. Some of you may have seen me deliver this in the club contest. My Tall Tales speech is sort of props on overload. This speech had 8 costume changes and 12 props, and that doesn't count the 5 Nobel Prize medals as 5, only as 1. It was fun. I think it worked. Most of the audience thought that it worked, and so far the judges have too. I'm guessing that if you didn't remember anything else from that speech, you probably remember the Superman shirt at the end, which was a surprise reveal at the end that nobody saw coming. And that prop alone, I think, was worth its weight in gold. Now, what about outside of Toastmasters? Do TED Talk users use props? Oh, for sure they do. One incredibly moving TED Talk was presented by Jill Bota Taylor, who talked about her own stroke and how that affected her brain. And she got into a fair amount of brain function. And oh my gosh, she used a real human brain as her prop. She had an assistant bring it out. She showed it to you, showed how it would fit in her skull. Obviously, it wasn't her brain. Where the hemispheres parted and where the spinal column. She used that very effectively. It was incredibly powerful. Now, she didn't have that in her hand for 18 minutes. She had her assistant come back out and take it off. But it was incredibly striking, and it got your attention really, really well. Bill Gates did a TED Talk a while back talking about mosquitoes and malaria. And his prop, he brought a giant jar full of a swarm of live mosquitoes, which he took the lid off and he released the mosquitoes into the audience. Boy, that got their attention, right? He assured everyone that they weren't infected, but live mosquitoes bouncing around is pretty darn powerful. Do you see props used in business world presentations? Well, for sure. If any of you know who Ron Popeil is, if not, if you don't recognize the name, Vegematic might be something you've heard of before, or the Popeil Pocket Fisherman. Ron Popeil was all about gadgets. And if he didn't show you the gadgets and actually show how they work, he didn't have a story. A great user of props in his presentation because they were his message. Steve Jobs, obviously, his company builds really cool things, and you can talk all you want about an iPhone or an iPad or a MacBook Pro, but until you see it, it's really not real. So he used props as well. Now, there are some people who have gone further than that in using props as brands. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, here's the first one that many of you, I suspect, have seen. This is Minnie Pearl. If you ever saw Minnie Pearl at the Grand Ole Opry, all you have to do is look at that hat with the sales tag still on it, and that was her brand. You could just see the hat without her in it, and you would still know, oh, that's Minnie Pearl. Great brand for her. Another one, Johnny Carson. Johnny did a skit called Karnak the Magnificent, and he brought it back, every couple months or so, where he would divine the question to an answer that Ed McMahon would give him. Now look at the hat, that incredible hat, and the cape, and the cards that had the question in them. That made that skit. Somehow it was funny every time it came back, if for no other reason than just that hat. Larry King. Have you ever seen a picture of Larry King without those big wide suspenders? I never have. Now they change color. Sometimes they were red, sometimes they were green, sometimes they were blue. But Larry King's suspenders were his brand. And that was simply a clothing choice, but it set him apart from all the other people who did jobs like his. Well, of course, the Pope. I mean, one look at that and you say costume and jewelry, there's no mistaking that's the Pope. And that brand stands out at a distance in any context. Now, I want to share one more with you, just because it's a friend of mine, and it may be somebody that a couple of you may know. I suspect most of you don't. A friend, her name is Chris Heater, and she's head of a group called the Wild Institute, and she goes around and gives speeches all over the country about leadership training and team building, and she does that by using her training with sled dog teams for how to pick a good sled dog lead dog, or how to build a sled dog team that works really well together. So what's her prop? It's her own dog, Two-Way. Now, if she's flying all over the country, the airlines aren't always friendly about that. But if she can take Two-Way with her, she does that. And Two-Way will be on stage with her sometimes just wandering around the audience. This is perhaps the mellowest dog I have ever seen, or maybe the mellowest dog on earth. But because of that dog, if her clients are asked about Chris Heater, oh yeah, that's the dog lady. Great brand, just because of her prop, which is her own dog. Now, I have one more possible brand that I'll tantalize you with. This one is only under consideration. It's not one that has been decided yet. But, me and my friend Toto, the Table Topics Terrier. I'm trying to decide, is this a brand I want to use? Mostly just in table topics. I've used it 3 times now in contests. The 2 club contests, PowerTalk and Contest Mastery, it didn't work that well. But mostly I think because I hadn't really worked out how to do it. I used it at the Area 43 contest and it was a winner. So I'm going to keep trying it. I'll use it at the division contest. If I get it through the division contest in Tall Tales, then I'll use it at the district contest. So you can tell me one way or another. Do you think Toto might be a good brand, at least in table topics? So I've given you some examples of benefits of, I'm looking for my notes here. There we go. Benefits of props, they are concrete, they're unexpected, they're dramatic, they're memorable. Some guidelines on how to choose an appropriate prop. Make sure it fits your message and it adds value. What you should do with your prop, make a plan, rehearse the plan. During use, how you might build anticipation and also make it easy to see. And then after use, put it away and maybe invite the audience to come see it afterwards. I've shown some memorable uses of props and maybe planted the seed that you might take a prop or a piece of costume and make it your brand. I hope now that you are inspired to be creative and paint your personality with props. Madam Toastmaster.